new crew. If you're new, my name is Cassandra. Today we are going to be taking a look through all 3 of my large family's deep freezers. We are a large family. We're a large family of 6, and we work really hard all year long in the garden, in the orchard, all the things to preserve an entire year's worth of food for us as a family. As we're digging into deep freezers, you're going to see I have 2 deep freezers here in my basement. You're going to have to pardon the real life construction things that are happening behind me, but we're working on finishing the basement off. Then we have 1 deep freeze out in the garage, and I'll bring you out to that one at the end. Full disclosure, my freezers are not cleaned out. This is just real life how my freezers look on a day-to-day basis. If you watch a lot of other like large family homesteading channels, you'll see that their freezers are very neatly organized in like milk crates or however people tend to do it. A lot of people like upright standing freezers. I don't like upright standing freezers for 2 reasons. 1, I think they can get left open way too easily. I do have small children. My kids range in age from 9 to 2, and there are plenty of times where I'm cooking dinner where I will send a child to a freezer in general and say, hey, pull me out a bag of this, or I need a block of cheese or something like that. And it's just much easier to make sure that these freezers are shut completely. Number 2, you just can't store as much in an upright freezer. It is much more like easily organized and whatnot. I'm not saying I would never get one, but for now we are a deep freezer family. Eventually I would love to go through these and like really give these a really nice organization. That is a goal of mine heading into 2025's garden season. I'm currently pregnant with baby number 5, and I would really like to have a nice organizational system kind of set into place going into 2025's garden season, where as things are being preserved, I already have a plan in motion, and my freezers will be the emptiest they are all year right before garden season starts. So that's my plan. But for now, this is how they look. This is how they are. This is really how they function. And disclaimer number 2 is the fact that everybody's homesteading journey is going to look very much so differently. We don't do any meat birds on our property. We have discussed that being an option that we have decided to start and then decided not to start so many times here. That being said, we don't produce any meat on or any protein on the property currently, other than the occasional rooster or eggs that we get from our laying hens. But you will see we do a lot of game meat, a lot of public land hunting, public land fishing, and different things like that. So that's kind of my disclaimer. Everybody's journey looks a little bit different. This is where we're starting. Eventually I would love to get further into the rabbit hole of producing more on the property, but I don't think that's going to happen until I'm kind of out of my season of being pregnant and having small breastfeeding babies that just take up a whole lot of extra time and energy. My husband does work more than full-time usually. He's on the road a lot. My husband is on the road all summer long, so usually in the busiest seasons here on the homestead, I'm usually rocking it solo with the kids and just trying to meet all of the goals that we have set for ourselves. So there's all my thing. We can always do more, but where we're at is always really good too. So there's that. Let's hop into our first freezer here. This is a 6-foot cubic freezer. This is where you're going to see not a lot of homesteading products in here. Actually, you're seeing a lot of store-bought things. We did put an orchard in earlier this year, but we just put it in. We produced a decent amount of berries this year, which was actually surprising. We weren't expecting to get any berries at all, but we got some raspberries, blueberries, gooseberries, golden raspberries, lots of different things. We got some honeyberries this year as well, all that we put in this year. Our apple trees started to produce apples. I believe they were our kings. We have over 30 fruit trees that we planted this year in the orchard, but that variety in particular started to produce apples. However, king apples can get up to like 3 pounds, so we picked all of those apples off right as they were starting to form because we wanted all the energy this year to go into the tree, the root systems, and apples that big are going to snap those branches right off because it's a brand new tree. So that being said, you're going to see some store-bought fruits here. I love mine from Aldi. We like to make smoothies out of these, so you see a couple of these in here. Store-bought chicken, store-bought breads and whatnot. I do make my own bread, but I've talked about this in the past. I have one kid in particular who does not like my homemade bread. Like, she just does not like any homemade bread product. It doesn't really matter if it's rolls, bread. She just doesn't prefer it, which is fine. So I still do buy a lot of bread products. I do make my own, but I don't rely on it. I still buy a lot of it. You're gonna see a lot of discount cheese in here. If you are new, we are located in Wisconsin, and earlier this year my husband works as a steam fitter, a welder, a pipe fitter, kind of does it all where he works. But the cool thing about my husband's job, and the one thing that he likes the most, is that he bounces around from location to location to location, basically fixing a new problem all of the time, which he really likes. But earlier this year he was working at a food distribution center that handled all dairy products. So anytime they had a box that came in that was damaged or the seal was broken, something like that, they couldn't sell it, my husband could either pick it up for free or for like next to nothing. So we still have a lot of discount cheese that my husband brought home over the spring while he was working, putting in some sort of refrigeration system at this food distribution center. So we have a lot of cheese that we kind of cut up into like smaller pieces. We can just open up a bag, grab a 1 pound block and seal it back up and put it back in the freezer. This is a mozzarella dill. We didn't like this as much, that's why we still have a couple bags of it. We're working through it, but not our favorite. This one we're actually going to start getting into some of our homesteading products. My husband is an avid fisherman, my kids are too. I don't get out as much, but I do love to get out. This is a big old salmon fillet. My husband gets these on Lake Michigan, so we have a couple of them in this freezer and a couple of them in our old freezer. Store-bought tortillas, but the entire rest of this, after we get through just like some chicken and some berries, some bread products, just like really pantry staple things, right, is when we start getting into all of our local meats. We actually buy probably anywhere from 1 to 2 pigs a year from our neighbors across the street. They raise pigs. I get to see the pigs come in off of the trailer as little piglets, grow into big, healthy, delicious pigs, and we buy our pigs from them. So we have lots of local pork here in all sorts of different cuts, which is fantastic. More discount cheese as we get further into the freezer. I won't dig it out completely, but this is what I'm talking about. It can be harder to organize a deep freezer just because you don't, unless you 100% know what's on the bottom, sometimes things can get lost. So I tend to keep a really good just mental inventory on what's in here so I'm not losing things. Essentially, this whole half of the bottom freezer is a couple like big 5 pound blocks of discount cheese that we got. It's usually cheese that we don't use as often, like pepper jack or something like that. My plan actually is to pull some of these larger blocks of cheese out of the freezer because they have been in here for probably 6 months or so. I'd like to put them through my food processor and shred them, maybe slice a couple. I'm not really sure exactly, but I would like to process them in some sort of way because in the 5 pound blocks that they're in right now, I'm not reaching for them as often. So there's that. But pretty much this whole half of the freezer is one part of a pig, and then this half of the bottom of the freezer is all ground beef. We don't buy a cow in bulk like we do a whole pig. We tend to just buy ground beef in bulk from a family member who raises beef or raises cows, however you would like to say that, and we tend to just buy ground beef. It's cheaper. It doesn't give us as much variety, and then we typically will use like venison roasts or our pork roast if we ever want a roast or a steak or something like that. However, hunting for us has not gone very well over the last couple of years. We haven't gotten a deer, so we've had no venison to add to the freezers. So for our red meat, we have been buying more like steaks and different cuts of a beef roast every once in a while and things like that to get some variety back in. So I would say that if we go through probably one more hunting season where either Joe or the older girls are not successful in getting a deer, we'll probably end up buying a cow, like a whole cow at a time. We're starting to get contacts into a whole cow in our local area. We've price checked a couple different things. We've talked about it, but it's just about finding a cow that's available as we have planned money-wise to make sure that that can be a thing. And also we'd have to get another freezer. So lots of things that have to go into it, but eventually that is the plan. But essentially this is freezer number 1. It's a lot of local beef, discount cheese, a couple like store-bought berries and things. Eventually we won't have to buy these berries anymore as the orchard starts to produce more. A couple fillets of fish, but I mean, really, this is freezer number one. This is a freezer if you are new. My husband was military for the first handful of years of our marriage. We got this freezer off of the PX floor. We asked them if we could buy the floor model because it was super dented. It still works. We've had it for many years. Works fantastic. Oh my gosh, we've had this freezer for probably almost 10 years. Works great. But because we got it off the PX floor and it was super dented, it was the floor model, we got it for next to nothing. And if you don't know, when you buy things from a PX or a commissary, there's no sales tax involved. So we got this freezer for a really good deal. This was our freezer when we were a family of 4. It worked really well for us, but obviously we outgrew this very quickly. These are all of like my bigger cuts from that whole pig that we got. It's like pork hocks, hams, the larger roasts, things like that. Now, the rest of this freezer, because remember it's pretty small, I have some yeast in here. Keep your yeast in the freezer. It won't age on you and it stays active and really great. More of some of those discount cheeses. And then once again, I'm not gonna pull this out because some of these hams are pretty big. I did get my roasts cut down this time into like 3-pound sections, so I got more pork roasts. Just in case my husband didn't get a deer, we had more roasts and more steak options. We can always slice these down into steaks if we want to as well. So it gives us a little bit more of an option. But the bottom of this freezer has whatever venison we have left from the last previous years. I've got some shredded zucchini in here, old cabbage from 2023's garden that honestly needs to come out and go to the chickens, or I'll get it to my brother-in-law and he'll feed it to his pigs or his cows possibly. But a little bit of older garden produce in here like this. This is older cabbage. I ate a bag of cabbage just like this out of the freezer a couple weeks ago and it was not good, so it's good to check it, but this stuff needs to go. And this is one of the downsides of having a deep freezer that I don't organize to the T, is sometimes bags of cabbage get missing or get lost and you think you ate through all the cabbage but you didn't. So this can go, I'm actually gonna leave this out. I'll just give that to my chickens tomorrow. But some shredded zucchini and like I said, just some game meat, a little bit of bear meat on the bottom, and just different cuts of venison. So this is freezer number 2. In the garage, this is freezer number 3, and you can already tell this is where most of the homesteading things are. So this is how I try to keep things organized. It might not make sense to everybody else, but it makes sense to me. And like I said, I would like to improve upon this, but it's not a project to do when the freezers are really full, in my opinion. I'd like to just eat them out as much as I can, basically from January through till like May probably, because I'm due with baby number 5 in June. So I think it would be a really nice project to do in May or maybe even April. We'll see. I don't really know. It depends on how quickly we can eat through the freezers, how quickly I can figure out a game plan for these freezers. But for now, this is the reality of where we're at. So we're just going to work our way across here. This is where a lot of the fishing comes in. And we have learned throughout the years that we really like brook trout, which are just these smaller trout. They're really delicious. We love to roast them with a piece of bacon in them. They are so good, delicious. Sometimes people ask me how the kids feel about me roasting a whole fish. Like, does it freak them out? It kind of did at first, but my kids have been eating this for a couple years now, and they're all pretty little, so they're pretty accustomed to it. They don't like get weirded out by it or anything, but we will store them just in these Ziploc bags, and depending on how big the fish are determines how many go into a bag. So like these fish are pretty small, so we did 2 for a meal for our family, but this one is my trout. It's my personal best. Let me brag on it for a second, but it is delicious. And this is a really big one, so we did 1 trout, but you get the gist. This whole front section here is just full of lots and lots of bags of trout, which is fantastic. This is where we keep our Italian sausage from our pig. I like to keep them separate from the pig downstairs just because these are so easy to lose, so I keep them in the little baskets up here. It works well for that. And then this is where we keep more fish, essentially. So like these are like panfish, cod, things that we will do for fish fries or bluegill, things like that. And then all the way in the bottom here, we have whitefish, which I've cooked a couple times. We don't like it. So we've been occasionally just pulling these out, thawing them out, and giving them to the chickens throughout the winter as like a protein boost to help them keep laying eggs. And that's been working really well. Bought some Italian sausage before we got our pig in. The rest of this is bacon and breakfast sausage. Really great, loving this. This system works really well for us in these baskets. Obviously this time of year I had to go into Aldi and buy my limit of 2 turkeys. I originally planned on doing one for Christmas, but my father-in-law bought a turkey and he's gonna cook it. So I think what I'm gonna do is probably just roast up both of these turkeys and can them. I've never canned meat before, so I'm excited to do that. And that'll free up a lot of room in this freezer. Really great. So there's that. The whole rest of this section here, other than like some random things we buy in bulk from Sam's Club, like this riced cauliflower, is all 100% garden vegetables of all different types of varieties. If you followed along all summer long, you know that a big goal of mine this year was to preserve different medleys of frozen vegetables, things that we don't can necessarily, and just get a better mix in the freezer for variety throughout the winter. So we did broccoli and cauliflower mixes, broccoli, cauliflower, and carrot mixes, broccoli and carrot mixes, a mix of greens that we did, which was Brussels sprouts, green beans, wax beans, and broccoli. So a ton of just like blanched and frozen vegetables that we did throughout this year. There's also cabbage in there. All of my peppers are in here. What else did we do? We did some frozen celery this year. This is this top bag. We also canned some celery this year for the first time. So in total, I did keep track this year, we froze a total of 28 gallons of vegetables, which is fantastic. That's not counting what we pressure canned, what we put in canning recipes, nothing like that. We froze 28 gallons of veggies to get us through the winter. And remember, this is still pretty full. We've been eating out of this for the last couple of weeks at least, basically since the garden has been done, which has been since like September. So last couple of months really, because it's almost the end of the year. But lots and lots of things. We also have rutabagas in here, and lots of things. Basically anything that we can't can is in here, blanched and frozen. Really great. Awesome, and it feels so good because this freezer truly is, from top to bottom, this entire section, probably a third of this freezer, is just homegrown homestead vegetables. And I think this is going to be the year that I have finally grown enough vegetables that we might be able to get through most of the winter without buying vegetables that aren't fresh. I will still buy fresh vegetables and things, fresh fruit, but other than that, I think we did really, really well this year. A couple exceptions to things that I will buy that I didn't grow, like peas. I don't grow shelling peas because I just think it's too much time. Maybe as my kids get older and I can like turn on a movie and we can all shell peas together, maybe it'll be worth it, but right now it's just definitely not. I will buy also just bags of frozen corn. I do have corn cobs in here. This is the first year we grew corn. It was pretty successful. So next year I plan to grow more. This year was really just about learning. So I will buy frozen corn and frozen peas. That is in here. Another thing that I will buy on occasion is bags of like frozen mixed vegetables of green beans, peas, corn, carrots. It's just for, it's a convenience item for me. It's really great. It's something that I don't think I'll ever give up, just because I just don't think I will. And that's okay too, but lots of really great things. I don't want to dig like too much in here, but my store-bought items I tend to keep right in my Walmart bags because it's easy to find. So like these are my mixed veggies, and then down here these are a couple bags of just regular peas. And I've got a thing of just peas and carrots. Then you're gonna see all the way on the bottom here, this is actually just like bad meat. The story with the bad meat on the bottom is my father-in-law had a freezer that he was looking to get rid of. We bought the freezer from him. He had dropped it off and he thought it would be like really nice to just leave the meat that was inside in the freezer. On the surface, the meat looked fine, but we did cook up, I don't remember what it was. I think it was a potato sausage and it was just really freezer burnt. You could tell it was really old meat. It did not taste good. So same story with the meat down here. We've just been thawing it out on occasion and either cooking it up and giving it to the dogs. It's perfectly happy for the dogs. They love it. It's not rotten spoiled meat. It's just freezer burnt. It doesn't taste good anymore. So we've been giving it to the dogs, giving it to the chickens, and they're loving it. They're enjoying it, but we've been doing that just kind of on occasion. So I'm gonna need to make sure I'm working through that this winter, clearing things out and just getting it so that things are in a better state so that we can really do a deep dive in these freezers. But all in all, that's really everything in here. So this is a lot of homesteading things, a little bit of that leftover pork, but really this is mostly just full of fish and vegetables from the garden, and that's it. And that's really, really awesome. If I can keep that kind of stride going throughout the seasons of just filling this freezer full of vegetables, it'll work really great. Also, the reason I keep my vegetables in this garage freezer is because the garage is right off of my kitchen. So it works very well. It's very convenient when I'm in the middle of cooking something, vegetables specifically, where I'm doing a side dish or I'm roasting them or something. I can put my meat in or start dinner and then come out here and grab what I need out of the freezer and get right back into the kitchen cooking. So it's very convenient for me. I like it a lot, and I'm gonna keep that method of my food storage. So maybe not a super deep dive of pulling absolutely everything out, not a ton of numbers other than the 28 gallons of vegetables that we did this year. The longer I have preserved food and the more I've kind of stored large quantities of food, the more you realize what works for you and what doesn't. Some people would look at my freezers and think it is complete chaos, and that's totally okay because not everybody wants to live like this. You know what I mean? So this makes sense to me. It's okay for me right now, and I do have plans to make it better. But I have also found out a lot of systems that really work for me, like having my sausage and my bacon up here, my small pieces of fish in here, my vegetables, very easy to grab, very easy to find, my bigger store-bought bulkier items in my freezers downstairs, because quite frankly I don't reach for those as often other than like my cuts of pork or my ground beef or something like that. But all in all, really good, really great, and I'm really happy with the way preservation season went this last year, and I'm excited to head into the next season and do it all over again. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you're enjoying Vlogmas. I will link my Vlogmas playlist down below for you guys or at the end of the video, and you guys can kind of catch up on all the Vlogmas things. So I hope you enjoyed my kind of rundown on my plan to get the freezers cleaned out. If you have any freezer organization like products or tips or anything like that that really work for you, let me know. I would love to hear people's suggestions. Like I said, it's just one of those things I'm thinking about throughout the winter, this winter, and hopefully in the spring we can kind of figure some things out as the freezers get a little bit emptied out. But so far, so good. I'm feeling really good about it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope wherever you are, you're having a fantastic day, and I will catch you guys in another one.